pelasan silanganan, alam ng puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang inilang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisiil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong buhaw, may dalagang tula at awit sa paglayang inamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidinig. Lupa ng araw ng walhati kong sinta, huwag langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga atis na pumatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Noong 1962, itinatag ang ESO, Standard Fertilizer and Agrichemical Company Incorporated, na naglalayon na maging isa sa mga nangungunang kumpanya ng mga kemikang pang-agrikultura sa Pilipinas. Ang pagmamay-ari nito ay nailipat sa Sugar Producers Cooperative and Marketing Association noong taong 1970 at pinangalan ng Planters Products Incorporated. Alinsunod sa Letter of Instruction bilang 178 na nilagdaan ni dating Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos. Noong Marso 1974, inilagak ang mga shares of stocks ng PPI sa pangangalaga ng Non-Profit Planters Foundation Incorporated. Ang PFI ay naatasan na ibahagi ang nasabing shares sa mga magsasakang Pilipino. Base sa pagtataya, 25 milyong shares of stocks na naibahagi na sa may higit kumulang 830,000 magsasaka shareholders. Mula noong 1973 hanggang unang bahagi ng dekada 70, ang Planters Products Incorporated ay naging mahalagang katuwang ng ating pamahalaan sa pagpapatupad ng Masagana 99. Isang programang may layuning mapataas ang ani ng mga magsasaka mula 30 hanggang 79 na sako bawat ektarya ng palayan. Ito ay isinakatuparan sa pamamagitan ng access sa teknolohiya sa mga Pilipinong magsasaka, pagpapahiram, probisyon ng abono sa abot-kayang halaga. Ang PPI na nooy may hawak ng 80 hanggang 85% ng lokal na kalakalan ng abono ang naging katangi-tanging Pilipinong kumpanya na nagbenta ng abono sa mga magsasaka na may diskwento na 40% para sa 600,000 ektarya sa buong kapuluan na naging bahagi ng Masaganan 99. Kaugnay dito, ang PPI din ang nagpasimula sa paggamit ng makabagong uri ng abono. Sa kasalukuyan, ang Planters Products Incorporated ay patuloy na walang sawang pagseserbisyo sa ating mga kabalikat na magsasaka. Ito ay sa pamamagitan ng paghahatid ng kompleto, dekalidad at abot-kayang mga produkto para sa kanilang mga sakahan. Kalakip ang pagbabahagi ng makabago at naaangkop na teknolohiya at suportang teknikal upang kanilang matugunan hindi lamang ang kanilang pangangailangan, bagkus pati ang buong bayan. Ang PPI ay isa sa mga naunang Filipino agrichem company na naging ISO certified. Patunay na world-class ang batayan ng kalidad at galing. Ang kabuang layunin ng PPI ngayon ay palakasin ang kakayahan at kapasidad ng bayaning magsasaka na mapaunlad ang kanilang katayuan hindi lamang sa pagsasaka kundi pati sa kanilang kabuhayan. Ang PPI ay may layuning matustusan hindi lamang ang kasalukuyang pangangailangan ng mga magsasaka at ng ating bansa, kundi paghandaan at payabungin ang kinabukasan. Ito ay sa pamamagitan ng pagpapakilala ng mga makabago at epektibong produktong hindi makasasama at mapapangalagaan ang kalikasan. Lahat ng adhikaing ito ay maisa sa katuparan sa pamamagitan ng patuloy na pagtutulungan ng PPI at ng ating mga bayaning magsasaka.
I commend Seedworks Philippines, headed by its President Carlos Saplala and his formidable team for actively advocating modernized technology and smarter ways for cultivating and harvesting high-quality rice. I also congratulate all of you for the successful conduct of Ang Hari sa Ani.
We would also like to thank all the participants of this event. Many farmer finalists achieved yields of more than 10 tons per hectare. Congratulations to the winners from Nueva Ecija and Davao del Norte. Our Anghari sa Ani winners were able to harvest more than 3 times the national average. In behalf of the entire Seedworks team, please accept our warmest congratulations.
Mabuhay ang Seedworks Philippines. Mabuhay ang lahat ng magsasakang Pilipino.
Okay, good morning to everyone. Welcome to the online forum of the Manila Times titled Food Security through Agribusiness and Digitalization. To formally open this event will be the Manila Times CEO and President, Dante Clint Ambassador.
Thank you, Conrad. Honorable William Dar, Department of Agriculture Secretary, distinguished speakers, they will be introduced properly in a while. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Manila Times Business Forum, Food Security through Agribusiness and Digitalization. Today's theme was inspired by the reality that societies here and elsewhere are trying to find ways to navigate through the new normal. And one of the key issues of the day is food security. Like most aspects of the economy, agriculture was disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. We still recall how the lockdown that was meant to contain the spread of COVID-19 also had a choking effect on the agricultural supply chains. Still fresh in our mind are reports of farmers having to destroy newly harvested crops that were stuck in rural areas because they could not be delivered to markets in urban centers. And even if they managed to make it through the checkpoints put up by various local governments, restaurants were shuttered, groceries were operating in limited hours. Food prices were threatening to spike amid the economic fallout from the pandemic that was already exacting a heavy toll. Even now, when cities and countries are gradually reopening, concerns about food supply have not completely dissipated because COVID-19 may still resurge, perhaps when the northern hemisphere of the world enters the influenza season. And naturally, COVID-19 is not the last global health threat that the human race will encounter. So learning lessons from our recent experience is vital to present and future sustainability of our way of life. Food security is vital even in better economic times, but in the early stages of the lockdown, it seemed like a matter of survival. Today's discussions will hopefully enrich the national discourse on food security. We look forward to hearing from Secretary Dar, whom we have missed as a columnist for the Manila Times. We look forward to having him write again, perhaps when his demanding schedule permits. The second part of this business forum is digitalization. It is an appropriate subject matter in discussing supply chains and agriculture. As we have reported in our newspaper, the pandemic is accelerating the digitalization of our national economy. Obviously, much needs to be done to prepare the Philippines for the digital economy that is now unfolding. We look forward to the insights of our speakers, and we hope that what they will share will be a substantial benefit to policymakers and other leaders in government who will be reading our reports from this event. So let me yield the screen now to our speakers, but before I do, I would like to thank all those who made this business forum possible. Thank you to our co-presenters, San Miguel Corporation, our sponsors, Planters Product and Seedworks, our special partner, NutriAsia, our organizational partners, the Financial Executives Association of the Philippines, or FINEX, and the Management Association of the Philippines, or MAP. And of course, thank you also to our media partner, TMT TV. Thank you also to all those watching this forum on our website and Facebook page. Tomorrow, we will publish reports both in our print edition and on our digital edition, which is an exact replica of our paper issue. The forum is also being recorded. It will be edited later and uploaded on the Manila Times channels on YouTube and Dailymotion. Once again, good morning, and I wish you all a productive morning.
Okay, to introduce our first speaker will be Mr. Fermin Adriano.
Thank you, Conrad. Good morning to everybody. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Maayong buntag sa inyong tanan. I have the honor and privilege to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Roberto Amores, or Bobby to his friend. Mr. Amores has immense experience and knowledge of the private sector engaged in the agribusiness industry. He has actually led organizations devoted in promoting agri-fishery development in the countryside through agribusiness approach. Currently, Mr. Amores serves as the president of the Philippine Food Processors and Exporter Organization. He also served as the council member and trustee of the Export Development Council of the Department of Trade and Industry. Concomitantly, he serves as the Agricultural Director of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry and an independent director of Global Ferronickel Holdings Incorporated. He is also part of the technical advisory group of the Department of Agriculture. Without much ado, may I turn the microphone now to Mr. Bobby Amores. Thank you.
Maraming salamat for that kind introduction. Anyway, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. To our very hardworking and good friend, the Agriculture Secretary William Dar, my fellow panelists, of course, the Manila Times officials who invited me, the online viewers, yung aking mga kasama sa agribusiness sector, my associates from PhilExport, PhilFoodX, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Agri-Fisheries Alliance, the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food, and the other business organizations where I am affiliated with. Guests, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. It is my favorite tagline every time there is an interaction or a business gathering or a discussion. Parati kong sinasambit yung tagline kong, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Sa lahat ng ating gawain, dapat meron tayong adhikain na bottom line o resulta. Anyway, I will now go to my main presentation. Thank you for this invitation to speak alongside the good Secretary, William Dar, and other distinguished speakers. COVID-19 pandemic has adversely affected the global economy. In fact, the Philippine economy is now in recession. Our gross domestic product, or GDP, shrunk by 16.5% in the second quarter this year, the biggest contraction ever. And the only sector that remained resilient in this time of crisis is the agriculture and fishery sector, which grew 1.6% in the second quarter despite the pandemic, thanks to the efforts that Secretary Dar and the rest of the agribusiness team has been doing, and we hope that it will continue to grow. The health crisis made us all realize the important contribution of agriculture in keeping our economy and people afloat. Essentially, because we need food to survive. However, the crisis has also shown us the inefficiency of our supply value chain to support the sector in facilitating the movement of goods. These should be addressed alongside redeveloping and innovating agriculture. I share this based on personal experience. I myself, being a farmer, an exporter, processor for over 40 years now. And I suffered the same fate as the others. We are all struggling to survive, to remain in agribusiness, to remain in our business. We're trying to look for innovative ways to navigate our business. I'm happy that Secretary Dar has been very open and engaging with the private sector. He is well aware of so many issues on the ground. In fact, if I may just share, our group, the Agri-Fisheries Alliance, where PCCI is a convener, had met with him 4 times already since the onset of the pandemic to ensure that issues we elevated are being looked into for appropriate action. Modesty aside, it would be difficult to attain inclusive growth without a strong public-private partnership, PPP, which we call in agriculture plant of Secretary Dar. And this is critical in achieving a dynamic and vibrant agriculture. Before I share with you our existing partnership with the DA and the DTI, allow me to briefly share with you where agriculture currently stands. It is very important that we do benchmarking, more especially with our ASEAN neighbors. Okay, slide 1 please. Okay. Makikita nyo po dun sa slide, no? Although a little bit late ang mga data, but it has not significantly changed. In 2019, agriculture contributed a measly 8.3% or 1.5 trillion pesos out of the approximately 18.6 trillion of our GDP. Contribution could reach up to 45% if we are to include support and allied services. Industry, however, contributed directly approximately 10%, while services got the biggest contribution, which is 60%. In the same time, in 2018, we backtrack 1 year. Philippine population at that time was 106.6 million. No? And out of this, 53.1% or 56.6 million of the population nakatira po sa rural areas. Employment contribution to agriculture was 24.3% or 13.3 million people, while agribusiness share to our total export was a measly 8.9% or $6 billion only. Looking at the data and coupled with a number of issues surrounding this sector, there is an urgent call to accelerate its development to be able to recover and cope with the growing market competition. Let us look and benchmark ourselves with ASEAN. Next slide, please. Sunod na slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, look at that scorecard. Ito, 2018 to, pero pakibalik lang, please, no? Para lang makita ng viewers natin. Pakibalik lang yung scorecard. Okay, look at this scorecard. Ito in 2018, pero hindi ito nagbago. Look at the scorecard about the agri-exports, please, no? Para lang makita ng ating mga viewers. Next slide. Yan, okay. Look at Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Malaysia in terms of their agri-exports versus their imports. They have shown significant positive trade balance compared to the Philippines na nagkaroon lang ng agri-export na $6 billion and huge importation of $13.3 billion and a negative $7.3 billion sa ating trade deficit. Next, please. Bakit kaya ganun? Please. Okay. Reasons therein are a gamut of unresolved issues on competitiveness, cost of logistics, production, food safety standards, market demand, nandoon. May problema tayo sa supply availability. Technology and product development, which is being developed now by DOST and the rest of the partner agencies, but malaki pa rin ang kakulangan dyan. Post-harvest facilities, which we have been discussing time and again to the Department of Secretary Darwich, I hope ma-action na. And lingering access to credit and financing, among others, and more recently, doon sa mga agri-exporters at sa mga kasamang exporter, the appreciating peso natin, which has been impacting seriously to our competitiveness as exporters, even the OFW. Malaki pong problema yan on competitiveness. Kaya magkakaroon ng slowdown tayo pag hindi natin nabigyan ng atensyon yan. Okay, next slide please. Ano ang current solution na in-integrate namin dito para magkaroon ng direksyon? We call this project ASPIRE, or the Agribusiness Support for Promotion and Investment of Regional Enterprises. Ito ay collaborative project between the PCCI and PCCI, essentially to link farmers directly to the market. We want to help farmers easily find markets for their produce and vice versa. Prior to COVID-19 pandemic, we have been in discussions for a project with the USAID delivered to undertake the profiling of producers, farmers, and market buyers so that we can easily tag the areas that produce certain commodities and match them with prospective buyers. Next slide, please. We also are currently discussing and incorporating our Aspire program with with the group to create an e-commerce platform for Aspire, where farmers and producers can readily meet and do business online. One of which is the Agribusiness Food Hub, inspired by our good friend and PCAPI Chair, Mr. Philip Ong. Ito pong Agribusiness Hub will be taking care of easy to access market info through product presentation and interface with Facebook and other communication system. Also, next please. May kasunod dyan. Also, ayan po. It will also provide up-to-date market information sa ating mga stakeholders, both for the market and the suppliers. And it will be using aggregated access to services. Ano-ano to? Financing, transportation, and other information issues, left and right, market, and the supply. We also have on the works an e-commerce platform also under the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which we are developing right now for its members, which can be utilized for a B2B between farmers and consumers. We call Shop All. So meron dalawang e-line e-commerce which are digitalized ang aspect. Okay. Now, what do we aspire for? Lahat tayo, we all dream to transform our Philippine agriculture into a dynamic and competitive sector. We want our agriculture to be at par for the rest in ASEAN. Matagal tayong always at this as a cellar dweller. And we have been advocating for policy reforms. Dami tayong dapat gawin, and working closely with the Department of Agriculture on certain initiatives to enable the sector to thrive again, to be more dynamic and competitive. Okay, next please. Under our Aspire, we have identified 5 priority commodities because of their consistently growing market requirements. These are mango, which is our national fruit, young coconut, cardaba banana for banana chips, ube and cacao. Itong mga commodities to can be grown anywhere in the country. Additionally, we also have identified the dairy industry. Paki-flash lang yung dairy. Meron ata akong dairy data dyan. Next please. Okay. Kaya nga pinopromote na rin namin yung dairy industry because of our demand versus our production. Diyan po sa table in 2019, ang import natin ng dairy products, milk specifically, was 3 million metric tons. 3 billion liters po. Ang ating production is 24 million liters lang, 24,000 metric tons. And we're importing in countries like New Zealand, United States, Netherlands, and Australia. Ito, we have a demand, so we need to produce. So these are all priorities that we can look at. That's why we're partnering closely with the Department of Agriculture as far as all these interventions are needed. And what needs to be done is, of course, innovation in agriculture. This one being the core program of PCCI through our president, Dicky Benedicto. Because will be one of the drivers in navigating business, especially in time of pandemic. Let me say that the farmers and fisher folks need to adapt to the dynamically changing times. Kailangan po natin mag-innovate and modernize the use of technology to increase productivity and income of our farmers. We need to implement an efficient integrated supply network so that transport of goods will be unhampered. We need to implement easy access to finance for farmers so they can go back to farming and agribusiness entrepreneurs to restart, expand operations. Ito po another important matter. We need to harmonize our domestic and export regulations compliant to the needs of the global market. Kailangan nag-a-adapt tayo, nag-a-adjust tayo sa competitive market to increase our agri-exports. Coupled with a more proactive support from concerned bureaus, agencies, especially on market access issues. Ito po napakahalaga nito, a proactive approach. We need to convince the private sector if all those things that I have described will be addressed slowly or moderately, we can convince the private sector to really redirect and invest in agriculture. For instance, in the dairy industry, as presented earlier, and too many to mention, madami. But implementing these reforms require adequate budget for the agri-sector. We in the private sector, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the rest of the business support organization that we work with, the Agri-Fisheries Alliance, manifest our strong support for the increase of DA's budget to fund the productivity program of farmers, fisher folks, and agribusiness stakeholders, and other programs of the department. We humbly ask our legislators and concerned executive department to allocate sufficient and adequate budget for the agriculture sector. On this note, maraming salamat and mabuhay po tayong lahat. Magandang umaga.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bobby Amores. Stick around because we'll be having a question and answer later. And I think the secretary is already here, Secretary William Tarr. Yes, sir. Good morning, Secretary. And before you speak, sir, Mr. Fermin Adriano, you do the honors to introduce our Secretary, William Tarr.
Yep. Thank you very much, Conrad. I'm going to introduce our Honorable Secretary, William Dar. Born to a farming family from Santa Maria, Ilocos Sur, Dr. William Dolente Dar worked his way up from a budding researcher at the then Mountain State Agricultural College, or MSAC, in La Trinidad, Benguet, to becoming a globally recognized expert and steward in agricultural and rural development. He brings with him 4 decades of exemplary record as a public servant and a professional with extensive research for development and professional experience in the field of science and agricultural research. Dr. Dar completed his doctorate in horticulture from UP Los Baños and his master's in agronomy and BS agricultural education from MSAC, now known as Benguet State University. He was named by then President Joseph Estrada as the acting secretary from July 1998 to May 1999. During his 11-month stint, the agricultural sector, under his leadership, registered an unprecedented growth rate of 9.8% despite the harsh El Nino, and this is a feat that remains unmatched up to this day. He was appointed the first director of the Bureau of Agricultural Research upon the reorganization of DA in 1987. He then served as executive director of the Philippine Council for Agriculture, Aquatic, and Natural Resources Research and Development, or PICAD, from 1994 to 1998. An awardee of various local and international awards, including honoris causa honors in various fields by well-known universities, Dr. Dar also holds the distinction of being the first and only Filipino to lead a global agricultural research institution as Director General of the India-based International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, or ICRISAT. At ICRISAT, he practiced transformational and servant leadership for 15 years as ICRISAT worked in developing countries around Asia and Africa. In August of 2019, he was once again appointed by no less than President Rodrigo Roa Duterte to serve the department and elevate the Philippine agriculture with this new thinking approach and establish a food-secure Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisher folk via fishery modernization and industrialization to attaining food security, building up global competitiveness, and reducing poverty. Dr. William Dar, a man of science, servant leader of the agri-fishery sector, and global Filipino from Ilocos whose heart is passion belongs to the countryside. Dr. Honorable Secretary William Dar. Thank you.
Okay, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Mas lalo na ang mga editors and leaders of Manila Times. Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, Dr. Min, for the kind introduction. Let me, I hope I have time to give a presentation. It all depends how much time you are giving me so that I can make it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what?
Sir, you can have as much as 20 minutes, sir.
Okay.
At the minimum, sir. You can
Okay,
even
sige.
take your time, sir.
I'll try to give the message in 15 minutes para hindi kayo mabore. If I can deliver the messages in 15 minutes, better or lesser. Okay, so ito ngayon, ang topic natin ay food security through agribusiness and digitalization. Next slide. Alam natin during the pandemic, ito yung nangyari, no? And this is a result of the study made by the World Bank. They are releasing their document transforming Philippine agriculture during COVID-19 and beyond this August. And we will also be giving you copies of this. So talagang apektado ang sektor ng agrikultura in terms of, you know, all this from pre-production to supply of inputs on farm production, produce transport, processing, marketing, and trade. Gusto kong banggitin na during the early days of the lockdown for Luzon, 15% of the farmers and fishers were disrupted. Now, with that also another data that came out as borne out from a study of the Anticipatory and Forward Planning Group ng ITF led by NEDA. Sabi nila 35% of the farmers and fishers were not able to market their produce. So maraming problema. As I've said, most of it would be the movement of cargoes, both food supplies and medicines. Now, result of the pandemic, sa hard work at industry ng ating mga magsasaka, mangingisda, at ganun din ng mga nagnenegosyo, yung mga grupo ang suporta niya sa sektor ng agrikultura. So, mostly crops, fisheries, ganoon din ang Finance Secretary, si Secretary Carlos Dominguez, ay isa siya sa believe sa agrikultura at tudong-tudo ang suporta sa atin. Next. Now, during the middle of the last 5 months, tayo ay gumawa ng consultation and formulation of a new food security framework that guides us now and in the future in many of the plans, programs, projects of the agriculture sector. So dito makikita ninyo yung vision na improve na. Mayroon resiliency as a major vision kasi ang ibig sabihin ng pandemya, we have to be resilient as a people, but much as to be said as well for food secure people. And seeing to it the farmers are prosperous, including that of the fisher folk. During this socioeconomic recovery and resiliency stages, tatlo yan, stages na yan, we are presently under survival. And let's see to it that we are able to really survive and all the resources of government have been refocused to make it possible na talagang we are going to withstand this dreadful pandemic that we are now in. But at the same time, we have to start planning for the rebooting of the sector. And part of that, I will mention later on yung stimulus package na sinubmit natin. And I would like to believe na rebooting in a major way can start using the 2021 budget. But with some of this stimulus fund to start this last quarter, and which we are hopeful to get support from the Bayanihan too, then growing the sector as we recover. Okay, so may 5 objectives na nakita natin na very, very, very important during abnormal and normal days. Now we are in new normal. Always we look at every opportunity to improve production, increase productivity. Kasi maraming attendant problems, global trade has been distorted, movement have been distorted. So every step of the way, dito sa Pilipinas, pagigihan na natin na maitaas ang productivity levels. Including that of accessibility at saka kaya ba ng publiko bilhin, stable ba yung presyo, then this objective of sustainability is always necessary, and that of food safety. So what are the basic strategies ito? We introduced this a year ago, but now they have become more and more important, very relevant as major strategies. Farm consolidation is a strategy to encourage the farmers to work collectively. We are not consolidating in terms of making or do away with the individual titles. No, we will consolidate for the processes, for production, and for marketing. Lahat yan. And that will encourage the private sector to come forward because there is economies of scale. And so agri-industrialization will be enhanced with the higher level of economies of scale that we have. Of course, so modernization will always be necessary. And I would like to believe that digitalization is part of modernization. And we have now a roadmap I will mention later on about digitalizing Philippine agriculture. Of course, there are other technologies, the best of technologies, mechanization also is part of modernization and the like. Industrialization, as I've said, where we will now encourage more rural industries, more investments from private sector so that already we can really start the agri-industrialization of the sector. So agribusiness as an approach to develop the sector is key. And even export promotion is now put in as a major strategy, working with PCCI, DTI, and many other stakeholders. We have to learn lessons from the other ASEAN member economies we are now there, but we are not yet there. I mean, in many ways, tapping the potential of exports. Then we need all relevant big, medium, small infrastructure to support the sector in the rural areas. Then these are the enablers, budget. Thank you po, Bobby, for mentioning na tutulong kayo pagpataas ng budget. Hindi ko pa rin nakita yan sa proposal ng DBM. We are now top 8, 66 billion ang recommended ng DBM sa Kongreso for 2021. I thought one of the sectors that have to be heavily funded during this new normal would be the following sectors: health, food, agriculture, education, and digital agriculture. So hindi ko nakikita muna yan. And investments must be coming from the private sector. And the legislation that will help will bring in more investments like the one under discussion in the Senate and in the House, yung create. Then we will have to revisit roadmaps for the various commodity industries. Okay, so down here are the key RAs: systems, products, people, institutions, environment. I believe that we need to empower more the farmers and fisher folk. We need to enhance their capacities for collective action. We need to enhance their capacities to be guided following through a value chain system. So during this pandemic, we launched as a part of our survival mechanism itong plant program. And we are not just looking on crops, but livestock, poultry, and fisheries. And so we have seen how this idea of a plant movement is now in the psyche of every household, and hoping that we can sustain this plant program over time. And if there is one, say, program under this umbrella program, we have the urban agriculture to mention, so that we are encouraging every household in the country to at least produce their own food, because it's more fresh, more nutritious, and the like, complementing what is commercially produced by farmers and other and fishers, of course. So this will be the umbrella program here on, not only during the survival stage, but during the rebooting stage. Plan program is the umbrella program under the new normal as well. So this is the stimulus package that we submitted to Congress. Ang balita namin po ay we will be getting 24 billion. But apat na components ang binigay namin earlier. Ang hindi po namin nakita doon sa 24 billion or itong cash for work. I hope mayroon naman cash for work pero nasa DOLE, nasa Department of Labor and Employment. So we are left with three major areas: productivity enhancement projects. Ito yung, the goal always is higher food sufficiency levels for most of the commodity industries. And these are the objectives again. Then the second part, major part, is income enhancing projects like developing more food markets, logistics,